No, it is. You have to trust me. It's one of them. You have to like put the key in, then back it out just a little bit, and like wiggle it till it turns.
That's doing too much.
Dr. Locker just walked by. He could probably get you in there real quick.
Yay, here,
But
catch.
I promise that one of these keys is the one. You gotta use this one that says LockPick. Okay, so any new ideas for projects you want to toss by me, and I can tell you whether it's a good idea, a bad idea, and the rest of the group can then hear it, help them.
Messaging app for ISIS.
Who?
ISIS.
An encrypted messaging app for ISIS.
Yeah, there's a news post that says ISIS doesn't have one yet.
Oh, okay. And what motivation might you have for providing such tool?
There's a need for it.
What's this?
Infiltrate from within. We've been talking about that.
It's encrypted. It actually sends everything.
So is a Christian worldview? All right, Abe.
You know the Acorns app or any other roundup investing app?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about like making the same type of deal except using it for like donating to like the Wounded Warrior Project or like a I don't know, children's hospital or something like that.
Okay. So idea being a mobile app for iPhone or Android or both, depending on the scope of what you're doing, right? But probably iPhone first would be my guess. And so maybe you have some initial charities on there that somebody can select from, and then they can associate credit cards with it. And what it would automatically do, so for those of you who don't know how Acorns works, it's to kind of get you started with stock investing. And the way it works is you associate your credit cards with the app, and every single time you make a charge, maybe the charge is $26.84. Well, it automatically takes that 16 cents on the roundup and invests it for you. So it kind of collects that over a week or over a 30-day period, and then it pulls that money from your checking account as a roundup, and then it actually invests that money then. So he's suggesting that rather than it going into an investment that's benefiting you, maybe that money is instead donated to a charity. I think that's reasonable. So a couple of sticking points for that, for just the implementation as I'm thinking through it. So let's take 3 different charities. I'm guessing that those 3 charities do not receive donations in the same way. So my guess is what you'd have to do is you would have to set up a central pot for receiving donations, flagging each one for where the destination should be, and then your entity would then have to give Wounded Warrior their $38 across the, you have 700 people using the app, and maybe $38 of that for this month goes to Wounded Warriors, then you would have to handle the actual donation of giving that money to Wounded Warriors. So as opposed to doing it directly, I mean, ideally it would be a direct donation where it would just happen automatically, but I suspect there is not a standard set up among these different donation sites. Now, having said that, it's possible there exists a site or an entity out there that already does this, that basically you can go to this one site and you can donate to a zillion different charities from this one site, and they've already solved that problem on the back end of how to ultimately get charity XYZ the money that you've pledged. And if they have an API, then what you can do is you could just plug into their API from your side. So generally speaking, I think it's a good idea. In terms of executing it, it could be a challenge. The flip side, the other challenge side of it is integrating it with a credit card. So how does that actually, how will that actually function? Is it? I'm not sure how easy it is for you to pull information. You probably would start with something like a Bank of America or a Chase Bank, one of the kind of the bigger banks, and see what APIs they have and how big of a headache it is to authenticate with them. Because effectively what you have to do with Acorns is I say I want to associate a new credit card. I go in, I put my credit card number in, I select the bank, all this stuff. I have to give it the credentials Actually, I don't think I put my credit card number in. I think I just give it the credentials for my account with the bank. And then it authenticates with the bank and then is able to pull information from there. I don't know how public that API is. That's something else you need to look into. So assuming that's doable and assuming there's a way to receive the money on the backside, I think it's a great idea. That's making a lot of assumptions. Okay, so have you looked into any of that at this point?
Not really. It's kind of part of bringing it up was wondering if you had any ideas. Because those are my
I know for a fact there are several applications that do have the ability to log into third-party bank applications. I know Acorns can do it. I know I have an app called Mint. That's for the makers of QuickBooks. I think they actually bought it, but that does the same thing. So it's associated with my E-Trade account, my Vanguard account, my Charles Schwab brokerage account, all my different credit cards. So it knows how to integrate with all those things. So that must exist. I've never personally done it, so I've never actually connected directly to a bank through an app, but the API must exist. I don't know what you have to do to get access to it. So that's something you'd have to look at, but it's been done before, so it can be done again, as the punchline. It seems like several apps have done it. I'm sure there's many, many, many other apps that allow you to do that, to check on your account balance and that kind of stuff. So very likely it allows you to, with authentication, pull information about the account, but not make transactions on the account. So I'm assuming that's how Acorns does it. They probably look at my credit card statement and go through each individual charge and then just round up to the next dollar, but not on that. They're not telling the credit card to round up. They're just keeping a running total of what those roundups would be. And then what Acorns does is it has now a final number, $14.08, let's say, is my total roundups that would have gotten me the whole dollar amounts and all my credit card charges. It then is linked to my checking account, and it can then do a pull from my checking account into their account to actually get the to fund the investment account. So that's how it actually works. So it's not manipulating your credit card statements. It's actually doing a pull. You've given them permission to do a pull from your checking account. So, I would say very interesting problem. I think it would be really cool if you did that. But the most interesting parts of that problem is going to be the interface between the app and the credit card providers, the app and the source of money that you're pulling the investment, or in this case the donation from, and then ultimately paying the companies the donation, whether that entity already exists or you have to create that. Then on top of that, so let's assume you have to create that. So now from a business idea, what's your motivation? So ethically, it seems like, okay, well, I'm going to allow people to kind of conveniently donate to these companies. Well, from a business perspective, I'm doing the work. I'm doing a lot of this stuff, for them, so they don't have to think about it. What's my cut, right? So, as the app owner, do you take 2% of all the investments? So, if ultimately Wounded Warrior was going to get $100, do they actually get 98 and you take 2? Is that a reasonable business model, or does that cross an ethical boundary? Because it's a donation, you're doing it out of the kindness of your heart. So that's something else that would be an interesting aspect of that project to grapple with that question. I honestly don't know the right answer.
Yeah, I thought maybe you could have maybe a section, don't have money to donate, watch this video. I don't know how profitable the videos are on ads or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or
not very, unless in bulk. Schumacher actually knows quite a bit about that kind of stuff. I think it requires a lot of people viewing it in order for it to turn into something real.
Or maybe donate to keep this app going type of thing, or
Okay, so kind of you can donate to one of these charities and there's nothing in it for you, the app maker, or you can support the app maker so that they can continue to add additional charities through it by taking donations directly to the app maker to continue building out the app. Seems reasonable. I'm approaching this more from an entrepreneurial business type idea. I think it's a really, really, really good idea, but then you start bringing in this idea of kind of human nature. from a fairness perspective, if you're going to provide this tool to help these charities, it doesn't seem unreasonable to take a cut, as long as the cut is like a fair cut, right? It's like, well, I'm going to give 91% of it to me. And the rest to Wounded Warrior. Okay, it seems like there should be a fair, a reasonable fee, almost like credit card processing, right? So when Cheesecake Factory takes your credit card fee to pay for a meal, the credit card company is keeping 3%, 2.5%, something like that of that transaction. It's for convenience, and even though Cheesecake Factory is getting a little bit less money for that purchase, the idea is that person came in there because it was convenient to pay. So maybe that's you become kind of a credit card company in that realm. Many of us maybe wouldn't take the time to give to Wounded Warriors, not because we don't believe in it, not because we don't want to, just because we're lazy. And if you have a way for us to easily just say, what do I care if I spent $1.94 on a pack of gum? Sure, the extra 6 cents could go to Wounded Warriors. That's no big deal. I'm not going to miss 6 cents. So you're giving them the convenience of being able to do that. So I think it's a cool idea. I just think there's some interesting problems associated with it. I suspect they're not as hard as I'm leading you to believe they might be, but they are interesting problems.
What would you think, like, let's say they are really hard to get, like, part of that API. What do you think about, like, going to, let's say if I just chose one bank to work right away, like Chase.
Right. So if that's the case, like a proof of concept.
Right. So, like, then kind of make, like, a web crawler type thing that goes to their website and actually slugs in on their main website and maybe downloads the bank statement or whatever, and parts of the bank statement.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that. I mean, these APIs exist, so it might be the type thing where you are going to be limited on which banks it's compatible with, but which isn't a new thing. I mean, the same thing's true with like Apple Pay. Only some people's credit card companies support Apple Pay. They don't have the infrastructure behind the scenes to support it. So, not every single credit card is compatible with Apple Pay. Many of them are, but not all of them. So as you investigate this problem, if you look at, maybe pick the top 5 banks that deal with credit cards. If the API is really easy to implement, then okay, you say, oh, well, this is worth it. But let's say you look at the top 5 banks and 2 of them have well-documented APIs. The other 3, it's kind of like this, somebody says it works, but you have to call up and talk to Chuck. And he gives you a handwritten API key or something like that, whatever it is. Then you might decide that for the project, you're going to scale down the scope where the proof of concept is there, where it will round up on for credit cards from certain banks, and then it will also pay out to certain charities. So maybe instead of finding that middleman or you becoming the middleman, maybe you identify 3 or 4 charities that already have a existing API that allows you to give them money. There are already, as you've seen in some of the hackathons, there are companies that allow you to what was one of them, Just Giving, from the hackathon in Raleigh. I think was that Just Giving? Yeah. So there are APIs that exist that allow you to give to charity. So I would encourage you to investigate that. So now you might only be able to support the charities that they support inside of your application, but that's what you'd want to pick. So I think it's a good idea from the perspective as you can tune it for scope based on how hard any of those individual parts are. You have a core idea that's good that might be too easy for a senior seminar project if you only support one bank and one charity, but depending on the difficulty of those integrations, it might be that if you supported 3 banks and 5 charities, that's now appropriate. Or 2 banks and 2 charities, now that's appropriate. So you kind of have a lot of wiggle room for kind of making it the appropriate scope, depending on how difficult it is with integrating into these various APIs. And then also from a presentation perspective, it's interesting because you can talk about the computer science aspect of what was the experience with integrating into Chase Bank versus Bank of America? Both of these had integrations, but it worked differently, and here was the challenge with this guy, here was the challenge with this guy, and that's an interesting problem that's very senior seminar-esque. Similarly, giving to charities obviously is a pretty cool thing, but also talking about the computer science aspect of what problems existed on finally getting money to these charities, because you suspect that a lot of companies that are operating on nonprofits that are taking charity money like that may not have complex ecosystems set up to accept automated money. It might be that the correct solution is for money to pour into your PayPal account and then you're writing handwritten checks, okay, at the end. Now, is that an appropriate senior seminar project? Well, quite possibly, as long as it comes with explanation as to why there's a weakness over on this side of the board, creating integrations between charities and something else. Although I don't think it'll end up being that, because like I said, that Just Giving place, which I assume is one of many places that connects money to charities. You just might have a subset of all charities. So I think you should do that, is the punchline. I think it's a cool idea. Anything else? Go ahead. Is this another dumb idea?
No. So I had two that I'm trying to decide between two.
Okay.
So the people that I work for right now have two applications that are mainly built in JavaScript, and then also some jQuery, but or they use jQuery. But they don't have a mobile app.
Okay.
And it's something that they really want, and I would use that as my senior sim project instead of getting paid for it.
Okay. But you've told me nothing about what their current solution does
Their current
and what that
solution-
app might do.
So their current solution is a billing service for internet service providers.
Okay.
And
So currently it's a website.
yeah, currently it's a website. That
Okay.
generates it. And I would build the mobile app for them. The other piece of software is a globe that you're able to generate points on with pieces of information and have those pieces of information update, pretty much to just track, like, are my towers still good, or do I need to go out there and check them, or where's the...
So this is a separate project. This is Globe One.
Yeah, this...
Not related to that first piece of software. This is
It's
project
related.
number 2 that
Yeah.
you're competing with.
Yeah,
Okay, you said towers. What towers are we talking about?
like internet service provider towers, like...
Okay, so still related to the company.
Yeah, just...
Okay, so the first one, let me just make sure I understand the first one. The first one is there's a front end that already exists for the web, and the consumer of that is an internet service provider.
Yeah, and they use it profusely, but...
So I'm an internet service provider. I go to this website. What am I doing?
You're monitoring all your customers. You're seeing if they've all paid up to date. You can see where if there's an error, like which tower's down, what to do with those. You can reset people's routers from this.
Okay. So just so I understand this right, so I'm an internet service provider, but effectively what I have is I have a source of data
Yeah.
that I want to sell. And instead of running my own kind of accounting for this, I hire a company like you, so I'm paying you some service fee, and you effectively manage my customers.
No, the software does. So we sell you the software. It does it all on its own.
Right, but so I bought a software product from you. Is this something I'm licensing, or is this a one-time?
It's a licensing.
Okay, so on a yearly basis, I give you I pay you a fee for access to the software. The software, you basically set the software up for, I'm ISP ABC, and I have 500 customers, and those 500 customers, when they create an account, they're creating an account through the software that you guys manage. Okay, right? And my window into my customers is through right now this web portal. So I go into this web portal, I log in, I can see all my current customers. I should be able to look at those 500 customers. I should be able to, I can ping their routers and stuff like that. So, my tech support people, if somebody calls in and needs help, are they calling me or are they calling your company?
Calling you.
Calling me. Okay, so I use this software to help my customers, so that this is a tool for me. So when they call me and say I'm having a problem with my router, I can go in, or my internet's down is probably the reality, right? That I log into your software, or your company's software, and I can reset the router. I can look at what's going on and try to debug from there,
Yeah.
right?
There's also a bigger part. There's a piece of hardware called a BMU.
Okay.
And it's kind of the size of this, and it actually throttles the appropriate amount to each person.
Okay, so if somebody's paying for 20 megabits, it throttles that. If somebody else is paying for 50, it throttles that. Whatever.
But also, if someone is using like Netflix, it'll make sure that everyone still gets the same amount that they're supposed to, even though that person's eating up.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But that's something the software is already managing.
Yes.
So that's not really part of the solution. The software already does that. Yeah, what you're talking about is instead of right now, there's already an existing acceptable web-based interface into that software. And so one project idea is a mobile application that would be a secondary interface into that software, right? Okay, so why do you need a mobile app? If the people who are using the software are the ISPs and they're people that are probably going to be sitting at a computer, what's the advantage of a mobile app? Who's that for?
Well, right now it's because there's a company that stole our idea and they have a mobile app, so
Okay.
a mobile app.
Okay, so if for lack of a better answer, the company you work for wants a mobile app for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so now what would that entail? So the website right now is currently talking to the software behind it, right? Is that an open API? Is it proprietary? Do you know what the nature is of that communication?
It's an open API.
Okay, so you would now write an iPhone front interface to that API to mimic what the website's doing. So you would be able to do everything, or some subset possibly, depending on how complex it is, of what you can do in the website on this mobile app. Is this mobile app iPhone, smartphone size, or is this mobile app a iPad? What's the?
There would be two different sizes, just because like the website one is set for like a 15-inch screen.
Okay.
I'd make two separate sizes, one for smartphones, one for tablet.
Okay. All right. So I think I understand that problem roughly. I mean, I obviously have to know kind of more things about what the web software does, but in general, I get what that idea is. Okay. So now the other idea is for the same company, and it has to do more with kind of network health. So it would be the idea is I could open up. Is this one a website or is this also a mobile app?
This is webs. It uses WebGL or WebGL.
The project you're proposing.
The actual globe thing. Uses
Yeah.
WebGL.
Oh, this already exists.
Yeah.
Okay. So
This was the project. Remember, I told you I was working on a project and I'd love to do it.
Okay.
I finished that one, and that's.
Okay, so you wrote. So there's a web solution for this, where it's kind of a web, a web generated, web presented globe that shows kind of a network outage type thing, right? Where
Yeah, it tracks people. Like you can track your installers to see where they're going.
Okay.
All that stuff too.
Okay, so and it's so the person who would be looking at this would be like your boss, the person who's trying to see are my employees doing what I expect them to do, and then also maybe technicians to see if the network is doing what they expect it to be doing. So kind of a couple of different use cases for that. Now you solved it for web already. So this would just be a second interface for a solution that already exists.
Yes.
Okay. I guess one thing that's going through my mind related to that is that going to be a big enough project if you've already solved most of the problem and you're just giving a second interface to it?
There's so instead of it just being an app, it's going to be running on the lock screen of a phone.
Okay.
So that's a big part to actually have it like alert you when something goes down. The web service doesn't do that yet.
Okay.
And for you to look at your phone and be like, oh, look, the globe screen, that's cool. There's nothing wrong. Or when it turns red and it zooms into something that's wrong, then you can be like, okay, is this something I can solve on my phone or should I go to a computer? Like, so I would say that it would be running more as a new operating system on a phone, like actually having a piece of it.
Okay. So let's assume that's an okay idea as well. How do you propose being able to separate that project, which is related to the company you work for, as well from the work that you already do for this company, especially that second project where clearly you've already been paid to solve that problem for one platform. So it seems like it would make sense if they're focusing on mobile that they would want to pay you to do the second thing. So how do you intend on proving that or protecting against being paid to do your senior seminar project?
Oh, because I've talked to my boss and said, like, when I come in, I'm not clocking in anymore. I'm not doing that. I'm just using the computer.
Okay.
Like, I'm not getting paid there anymore right now.
Okay, so basically you'll still show up to work like you were showing up to work before, but you won't be making a paycheck. You'll be working on this project. Is that ideal versus still working and also doing a project on the side, or is your belief that you can't balance both?
I mean, it's ideal to get paid, but I probably can't balance both.
Okay, so doing two projects, whatever you're being paid for at work, as well as doing this, is probably something that's going to end in failure. So it would need to turn into, if you're going to do something related to work, it would need to turn into something where you're effectively doing this at as if you're working, but without a paycheck. Okay. So I guess I have several concerns. A, does it make sense for you to, from an ethics perspective, go into a place that we're getting paid from and continue to do work without getting paid? So A, there's maybe an ethical question there. B, can you pay your bills question there? Uh, uh, though both of those seem like they could be large projects. I also question because your major is IT, right?
Yeah.
Where both of those feel like they're more appropriate for a CS project. Now, I'm okay with an IT person doing a more CS appropriate project, but are you setting yourself up to fail?
I learned a lot.
Okay, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're telling me that you could accept the challenge and you feel okay with it, then I'm fine with that. I'm just telling you my initial concerns. Because the last thing I want to do is I don't want to approve a project for somebody that is just going to end up the fear here from my perspective is this is a project that A, you can't complete, B, is going to cost you to not be able to pay your bills, and C, is going to cause you to maybe not just lose the job in the end because you haven't been productive for them. It's like, look, even though we didn't pay you, you accomplished squat. We don't feel we got our money's worth. So those are, I guess, some concerns. I mean, generally speaking, both projects, at least in principle, depending on scope and what features they have and what platforms you'll be writing them for, sound like it could be a reasonable project. So I would say if you considered all those other things, then you can move forward with either of those that seems most appropriate. I guess I don't necessarily have a preference. Maybe the second one feels more, I guess, appropriate because somebody with a mobile phone, a technician, might be able to actually utilize that when they're in the field. Whereas the first one seems more like almost just like an app because we want to have an app. I'm not sure how useful that is if the major user of it is the tech support at the help desk who's sitting at a computer already. I'm not sure that tool really benefits anybody, but at the end of the day, if the company you work for wants both of those, then who am I to say which one is more important? So I guess either one of those is fine, given my I guess concerns. So any other questions, or does that give you enough to worry about?
I guess so if someone does a project, so say Abe does his project, and he gets to the point of the API for the credit card stuff, and he's not able to get that sort of part. So like for my project, if I'm not able to get a certain API, say, to jump into the lock screen of a phone,
Mm-hmm.
would that be detrimental to someone's?
So literally everything works except like the lock screen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a 0. No, I mean, generally speaking, it would be one of the things where when you come up and give your presentation, you're going to say, okay, here are the things I found that were easier than I expected. Here are the things that were harder. And if the lock screen ends up being something you thought you could handle, and it ends up being that it's just a complete nightmare to deal with that, part of what you're going to be doing is you're going to be documenting your experience. So that might be a feature that gets left off the project, and there might be a very good reason for that. Part of the specifications document side of things should, in the ideal world, you would have discovered that difficulty in specifications and basically cut that from requirements during specifications. Said, okay, well, this seems doable, but this is a low priority thing, probably a version 2 thing, because I need to be able to do this within this time frame, and it's not going to fit in the budgeted hours. So that's reasonable. So the idea would be that should be caught at specifications, but playing devil's advocate, and when you initially look at it, it looks like it's doable. That when you actually dive into it, you find that it's actually more difficult than you expected. Well, at that point in time, omitting it from the project might be just a necessary evil, and it may cost you some points depending on what the rest of it is. If it should have been doable. Let's say that there was 5 features in your app and you accomplished 4 of 5. And let's say 4 of those features were pretty trivial features. And the one complex feature was the one that you didn't do. So those 4 features that you did, maybe those should have only taken you 50 hours. The other 250 hours should have been plenty to accomplish this last piece that you completely cut out. So in that case, it certainly would hurt your grade. But if it's the type thing where there's, I budgeted, 5% of my time to do something, and it really would have accounted for 50% of my time. Well, then it's reasonable to cut it out, and you might lose a couple of points, but it probably not to a detrimental type of loss.
I guess one last question. So if you have something, so say an API costs money to access, or you need a piece of hardware, is that okay to ask an employer to pay for it?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, they just can't pay you for the work.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's happened. I mean, that's fairly common. I mean, like in the past, I think I told you we had a student either last year or 2 years ago do a project where they were setting up smart boards at various. It was for Sendix. And so they were putting up like smart advertising boards at different places. So, Sendix paid for the boards, they paid for the software, and, this student, as not part of their job, created the whole solution. So you're not being paid if they're giving you the technology to implement it. They just can't pay you for your time. To support the APIs and stuff like that, that's all fine. Good.
What about creating like hardware solutions in general? That's an okay thing?
I would say beyond okay. I think that we need some of those. I think that's something that we haven't had enough of in the past that would be cool.
I was thinking about creating something for like a beginning aquarium hobbyist, where you would be able to monitor like the temperature, the pH, and the hardness or softness of water in aquarium tanks, and be able to perhaps transmit that data wirelessly to a phone or a computer.
Okay.
So I'm still looking into the ramifications and the cost of that.
Okay.
Give it the flip.
For their water problem. Yeah, I mean, I think that potentially could be a good idea. I mean, obviously, it would have to be more than having some device that already has sensors for temperature and stuff like that. Just sending it to some device and you display it, but that type of thing.
And I know there's professional solutions for it as well, but I don't know. I only found one that actually transmits
Mhm.
data.
And redoing a professional solution would actually be okay.
Okay.
Because keep in mind the project is also supposed to be a learning experience. So if you're in a situation where it's like, okay, well, I know of this solution, and I mean, whatever it costs, even if it's cheap, maybe if it's $50, like, okay, well, yeah, it would make more sense to just buy it and be done with it. But maybe you're interested in how that works. So you want your project to be essentially building, knowing that it's possible, and then trying to reverse engineer it and building it yourself and solving those problems. That's perfectly reasonable. Because at the end of the day, you're going to learn a lot in that process. What else? Go ahead.
What about the thing that I was going to do last semester for the competition or whatnot? Would I be able to do that?
Okay, so as just a reminder, it dealt with wait lists, right?
Wait times and
So the idea is if they're so would this be a mobile app? Would this be a website?
it would be primarily a mobile app.
Okay.
But I feel like there would also be a website tied in. I just didn't know if that would be a primary goal, I guess, for this.
Okay. So
It's not necessary.
there's kind of two sides to it, right? Yeah, there is two sides. So on one hand, the use cases here. So let's say I'm a restaurant owner. So I'm a restaurant owner. My version of the app allows me to, if it's a slow night, let's say, allows me to put out, temptations, if you will, to get people to come to the restaurant. Special deals, that kind of stuff. On the other end of the spectrum, if it's a really, really, really busy night, but I don't want to turn away customers because I suspect that it's only going to be busy for this 2-hour period, I could do like bar specials where they can come get in line, and while they're waiting for their table, they get a 50% discount at the bar or something like that. Okay, so that's one side of it, is the business side of it. Them having a way to talk to the customers, and then I guess possibly also them being able to advertise what the current wait time is, where they might be motivated to do that if it was zero wait.
Right.
They probably wouldn't be motivated to do that if it was a 3-hour wait. But the other side of it is the consumer side. So the consumer side is part social media. So part of it is I'm waiting in line at this place. I want to start creating a buzz about this wait with maybe 2 goals in mind. So I showed up to Restaurant X, and it's a hour and 45-minute wait. Let's say we'll use Chicago wait times. Okay, so it's an hour and 45-minute wait. So I've gone in and I've checked into this restaurant, said it was an hour and 45-minute wait. I have two purposes with that. One is to let other people know, because do unto others. You wish you knew before you left the house that this destination was maybe not going to be what you wanted it to be. But also you maybe want to bring awareness to the restaurant. So maybe that turns into a push notification to the restaurant side of the app, where now they're aware that people are complaining about the wait time. And maybe they turn around and push a special out. So now that person who they walked into the nightmare, they're already waiting. Now all of a sudden they can take advantage of a bar special because it was just pushed out because the restaurant reacted to the. So does that pretty much capture the?
Yeah, that's pretty much the bare bones of what
Okay.
I would want to accomplish with that.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think that's certainly doable. I think for the senior seminar project, you would certainly have to limit the features. My guess is that project is a bigger project than I think maybe you're thinking it is. Is one side of it. So you would certainly want to limit probably the mobile platforms it's 4 to 1. Either do it for Android on both sides or do it for iPhone on both sides. Because I think it's more important to have a full set of features or a full set of acceptable features in place. There might be some of those features that you can dump. I would kind of prioritize which features are most important. So obviously, a customer being able to show up at a restaurant and check in geolocation-wise, they need to actually be there, kind of as proof that they know what the wait is, and say it's an hour and 45-minute wait. It's a pretty core piece of the thing. So you need people reporting data based on the wait time.
Yeah.
The other side is you need to have the ability for the restaurant owner to be able to put deals out there related to their establishment to entice people to either stay in line or come to an empty restaurant. So those are kind of core functionality. So that's the back and forth war, right? Consumer is either going to wait or not wait. Business owner wants to either, if they feel they have enough business, let them complain, let them turn away. That just means we're popular if we're busy. If they don't perceive they have enough business or they want to keep them there to add life to the bar or whatever, well, let's give them a discount at the bar. We'll take their money one way or another. So that's a core component to it. So then maybe some of the, there would be a lot of extraneous features because this is the type of app where you can sit there and think about for, a week and just keep coming up with feature after feature after feature after feature. So I think you really want to focus in on what is the minimum viable solution for that and do that right. And then look at a version 2 for what additional features need to be added to it. So I guess the push notification thing I would put pretty high up on the priority list. If I'm a consumer, I'm going to go in and kind of favorite my restaurants that are in there that I like going to, but I also fear there could be waits. Well, maybe I want to be notified when there's a special. So if restaurant XYZ is doing a bar special and I'm not necessarily hungry right now, but I can see myself being hungry in 2 hours, and it just so happens they have an hour and 45-minute wait. Well, let's go over there and enjoy some drinks. And basically, I'm waiting to be hungry anyway. But I want to be notified that a special was just pushed out to one of my favorite places. So I think those are kind of the core important things. So I like it. My concern would be scope. I think it could get too big if you let it.
I guess when you make the requirements document, I guess I can talk to you about going over that and what is really essential for this to be a complete enough app that it can be useful for people.
Sure.
And then we can take it another step. I guess I have another thing too. I was working with my friend on it, and he's definitely the business side of things. He's very familiar with that kind of stuff. I was wondering if it'd be fine to work with him, not like in development side, but getting information.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's reasonable. But the business side of it isn't a requirement for the project, is what I'm saying. So you're effectively saying you want to make sure that when you're choosing features, the features are compatible with what the business would ultimately be.
Right.
Yeah, that's not a problem. So that answers your okay, what else? Some good ones. Is this gonna be a crappy one?
Yep. That's the one I sent you the other day.
Did I look at it?
Yeah, you responded.
Remind me.
Yes, hunter tracking app.
Oh, yeah. So in general, I think something like that is pretty good. I think I told you it would depend on what features it would have to have. Somebody, can you elaborate on that at all? So, I assume the idea is this is kind of two-sided. One is for the family members of a hunter, right? And the other is probably the hunter themselves for, whether they left something out there, or is it really just a safety app?
I guess it could be evolved into something like that, but basically like a runkeeper type thing where it would keep track of your walk.
Okay.
Good understanding that can be saved and sent to family members, whoever you want it to be sent to.
Okay.
Like your hunting party, whatever.
Find my iPhone for a potential dead hunter.
Right.
It's a don't get lost.
Or
app.
finding a stand, don't get lost, that kind of thing too. But if something goes wrong, you can send those coordinates from the GPS part of things to the authorities so they can find you out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
Instead of calling and saying there's trees around.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I like the idea. So now it's a matter of there's two sides to this. One is, do you minimize features and maximize platforms? So do you do it for iPhone and Android and have a minimalistic set of features? Or do you do it for just iPhone or just Android and have a little bit larger set of features? I think for a safety application like that, either one of those is appropriate, because you ultimately would want to get it into as many people's hands as possible, but you also need a proof of concept first. So it's The other thing that I would throw out there, and I don't really suspect this is a major problem, and because you're a hunter, maybe you can, advise on this. I mean, in typical hunting situations, are GPS signals available? Is that a problem on occasion, or is it pretty much as GPS is acceptable in most hunting most hunting situations? Well, but the GPS isn't coming from a carrier. The GPS, I mean, an aspect of location services is, but the GPS is going to be geosynchronous orbit satellites. So I guess my question is whether or not tree cover is impacting your ability to get an accurate GPS signal. I'm thinking about it from the perspective of like golf. So I use a golf GPS if I'm playing with buddies or something like that, or I'm too lazy to actually scope it. But the accuracy for that is only to a certain extent, but I usually have a decent signal because when you're in the middle, well, I suppose unless you're in the woods, then I might be in a hunting situation. But generally speaking, I rarely have a problem where it says no signal. Sometimes the accuracy is within 8 yards or something. So, but who cares? They're going to find you if they can get within 8 yards of you, right? So I guess my concern would be: is GPS a reliable thing, or maybe is it reliable enough from a safety perspective? I assume it's got to be better than guessing. Has to be an improvement over I'm roughly here. Maybe it hasn't updated in 15 minutes, but they at least should know some radius where you last were within the last 15 minutes or something like that. Okay.
But I know I don't get problems with GPS when I'm driving up there, going to the place where we're staying.
Okay. Well, GPS should have substantially better coverage than cell. I mean, that's the nature of GPS. But you have to have cell coverage in order for those other folks to be able to get those data coordinates. So your app is capturing your position all over the place, but you're still you and your phone know where you are. That's it. So now you're doing the 911 help button with 0 bars. That's not working. I track you. I have you at some gas station halfway to your hunting grounds. But in principle, I think it's a good idea. Okay. I mean, in general, especially when it comes to a safety type application, anything is better than nothing. So I think it's certainly worthwhile doing something like that, and then, tracking the how well it is. I mean, that could be a technology that could actually be really good. Could turn into a legitimate business if the nature of those environments is conducive with it. My wife tracks me all the time when she wants to know if I'm, if I'm on my way back from a meeting or something like that. She just does the Find My iPhone thing and finds out if I'm still wherever my meeting was or if I'm on the road somewhere heading back. Well, when you get married, maybe you'll understand. I'm basically a pet. I'm microchipped and everything. Not kidding. So in general, I like the idea. So kind of Find My iPhone for the family members to kind of keep tabs on a hunter, and as well as the hunter, kind of the cry for help feature, being able to give more accurate location of where they are than they would otherwise describe their trees around. Yeah, I think it's good. So as long as managing a scope thing. Either add features to one platform or do multiple platforms to cover a larger population.
I was thinking like the microchip thing that you were joking about.
Yeah, I'm not joking.
Well, I mean, it's not such a bad idea, like using a tile. Those
Yep,
tiles.
I just saw one at lunch today.
Or like
Andy Locke has one.
Yeah, like just using something like that might hang to a certain place.
Well, yeah, but then you're still in the same situation with cell tower stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of those tiles is that they have a kind of a GPS sensor, and then if you get, and then what? I think they're also Bluetooth. Is that it? So when you get within range of roughly where it is, or is that the way it works? So because he had the guy, Andy Locke had it on his keychain. So the idea is he loses his keys. Let's say he leaves his keys at a restaurant. I'm assuming the way tile works is it tethers with your phone. So it remembers the location of where your phone was last in proximity with your keys. And then when you leave, and all of a sudden that Bluetooth connection has been broken, and you get home and you're, well, hopefully different set of keys. It's your office keys, not your car keys. Okay. So now you're home and you're wondering, oh, where did I leave my office keys? You can check on the map and it'll show the restaurant you were at earlier tonight because you left them on the table or something like that. So I assume that's kind of how that works, is it effectively pings it every so often, updating current location until there isn't a Bluetooth connection anymore, and then it just remembers the last known location of it. So I don't know if that, I mean, if you already have a cell phone and the cell phone's with you, I mean, if you assume you're with your cell phone, then this thing would work fine. You could have as a backup plan, I suppose you could maybe wear one of the tile things as like an earring. So that's attached to you. So basically you're marking yourself. So you have a backup plan. So you have your phone is with you and that's keeping track of where you are, but your phone is also talking to your tile. So actually that doesn't really help, because if you lose your phone and you keep moving, it's only going to know, it's going to think your tile is with your phone.
Well, and ears are so easily removed. So.
That's a good point. That's a really good
For
point.
the next person that comes along and finds your phones, they can, like, no, that doesn't make any sense either.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just a bad idea.
If I connect to the Wi-Fi or some network, then it would be fine. But you would have to be able to.
Is there's stuff out there, like there's a whole business called Track Your Truck out there that tracks people's cars.
Yeah.
So there has to be something out there that doesn't necessarily use cell service, but GPS service that keeps on pinging.
Well, there are some technologies that use satellite-based data communication rather than cellular-based data
So
communication.
maybe that's the way to do it instead.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trade-off. Is satellite-based data communication is available in a broader area, but it doesn't have the performance. But who cares if you're just updating GPS coordinates?
Yeah.
But now you have to have the ability of doing satellite data communication. I don't know if most smartphones, my guess would be most smartphones cannot do that.
But you use a KML creator, like you use a parser that parses the signal it's getting and then parses it into KML and then show it on.
Well, but you would still need to, if you're going to be able to post where I am, you have to be able to send something to a satellite.
Mm-hmm.
A GPS radio basically reads satellite pings. You can't send it.
Something that
Yeah, what I'm talking about is like the technology that like satellite-based internet uses.
Okay.
Where your communication with the satellite is both up and down. Historically, it was not up. You could not talk to the satellite, but now you can. But I don't believe that technology is built into phones. Phones are receivers of GPS from a satellite radio perspective, not or a satellite antenna perspective, not a radio perspective. But I do not believe that they have the capability in general. I mean, there's probably military-grade cell phones
So you
that
gotta
might.
find the device that does.
Yeah, so maybe a third-party device that you could integrate to your phone that knows how to talk to a satellite. Now you're carrying extra gear with you, so it's like sat phones. In fact, having said that, it's probably very, very, very likely that cell phones do not have that. Otherwise, there would be some app out there that would allow you to turn your cell phone into a sat phone out in the middle of the boonies. Go ahead.
I just have one question. Where is your microchip located?
Well, I have two. Okay. One of them I had put in when I had my surgery on my back, when I broke my back. Okay. The other one's actually on the bottom of my foot, my right heel.
What's that doing for you?
I've never had it checked. So you expected it to be a creepy answer, but it's really not. That's
In case
just
it gets lost, they can scan it and return it to its rightful owner.
yeah. Well, no, that's what it's for. Yeah, with some of the medicines I'm on, I can get delirious and start wandering. So you can scan me, and they can just they bring me back to I guess I don't know if there's a central hub or something.
So if you're wandering around and all delirious and stuff, and someone finds you acting crazy like that, and you tell them to scan your microchip in your foot, that won't look weird.
Well, no, they're gonna have to take me to a place.
Okay.
It's like you take them to the emergency room like something's wrong, and then they scan you just like when I take my cat into the vet. They scan it and make sure she's microchipped. make sure the chip is still transmitting.
Can you go into MRIs with those things? Because wouldn't those just like rip right out of your body?
Well, I don't fit in an MRI anyway, so it doesn't matter. I got to go to special hospitals that have the open MRIs.
But
So
still,
they have the open
same
MRI.
concept.
Not really, because the open MRIs they're only covering the part of your body you're scanning. The closed MRIs, they put you the entire thing where they just magnetize your entire body and everything rips out.
I thought you just go to the airport and do the whole.
I have to go through a special one of those too. Yeah, my gut always sets it off at the airport. I always have to lift the flap. He gets under there with the. I'm not kidding.
Just holding the Uzi underneath it.
Telling you, but perks of being fat. So sitting there, like paint chips.
All right, what else?
As my idea was to use
Did you shave a little?
a while ago.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought like earlier this week.
No.
It
not
looked
earlier
worse than this.
week.
Isn't that like against your religion to shave?
All right, go ahead.
My idea was to make a computer game that would use your phone as a motion controller, and just all the I guess movement and stuff would be on the phone as well. With the idea of the character, I guess it would be something like either you could have something like Star Wars Jedi Force themed, or something like the old Harry Potter games where you had to make the specific symbol in order for your spell to go off.
Mm-hmm.
And you could use the phone to do that. And the advantage of that is you don't need to go actually buy a motion controller.
Okay, so what's it gonna? Okay, so your phone becomes a motion controller.
Yeah,
So I'm
you're-
thinking your phone kind of becomes like the Wii joystick,
Yeah,
right?
pretty much.
Okay,
You're
but
using-
on top of that though, the game is also on the phone.
No, the game is on your computer.
Okay,
You would
game-
have to pair the phone with your computer.
Okay, so there's a test game
Yeah.
that you would create. So
Yeah.
so there would be a game that lives on the computer. The phone connects to that somehow.
Yes.
Okay, whether it's a Bluetooth connection or a Wi-Fi connection, whatever it is. So you'll figure out what kind of technology you use to do that. That's refreshes fast enough to be reasonable, and then your motion based on your phone is going to translate the stuff that happens in the game.
Yes.
Okay, I mean reasonable enough. I do suspect that connecting your phone to an app on the computer is actually going to probably end up being easier than you suspect.
Okay.
Because the Bluetooth APIs and the wireless APIs are pretty open, so you're just going to basically be sending JSON data of your accelerometer information.
Yeah.
And then you'll be parsing it on the game side of things. So a majority of the complexity of the project is going to be whatever the game is.
Yeah, you would have both the accelerometer data as well as probably you would have some sort of virtual joystick on the
Mhm.
on the phone as well.
So what's the so do you have a concept of what that game experience is going to be like?
I haven't focused on that too much. I assume it's going to be some sort of either, as I said, some sort of like Jedi thing, like pulling your enemies around, throwing them off cliffs. That'd be fun. Or you could go the more recreating some of the like old Harry Potter games where you would have to like trace the symbol in order for the specific spell to go off. But instead of just learning it once and then you never need to do that again, you would instead do it each time, and you'd have to remember what you're supposed to do to use each skill.
Okay. And are you thinking that the game is going to employ? Is it going to be a 2D type of experience, a 3D type of
It's gonna be
experience?
3D.
Okay, and are you going to use an existing game engine like a
Yes.
Unity or something?
Yes.
Okay, so
I
are you
don't
thinking?
have the time to make my own game engine.
Okay, so I mean, are you thinking Unity? Do you have a game engine in mind, like an Unreal Tournament or something like that? The Unreal Engine.
Yeah, I mean Unreal 4 is free now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Unity's free, so Probably either of those.
Okay,
I haven't worked with either yet,
sure.
so
So the punchline would be what you would effectively do instead of the expectation being that on the back end you have a a major cinematic game. It's going to be more of a almost a proof of concept of various things you can do with a phone as the remote.
yeah. So basically, the idea is to get the phone controls working and paired up with your program on the computer, and then depending on how much time you have left after that, is then you could just develop the game more. You get the basic the basic use of the phone as a controller down, and that'd be the main point. And then of course a simple game to start with as the example.
That shows off some of the things that the phone as a controller is capable of.
Yeah, and then if you have
So
more
rather
time,
than
you can
it be
always
a
develop
actual game, it's instead of just kind of a 3D scene that you might be able to perform, it could be 10 or 12 different kinds of actions. So it might be 10 or 12 different, I don't even know if mini games is appropriate, but mini interactions with
that
with
would
the
be-
with the 3D
That would
environment.
be probably what I like the lowest point to shoot for.
Yeah, my suspicion is that the getting the phone to talk to the game and having the app translate that stuff is probably going to be no more than 20% of the total problem.
Okay.
Well, that's still substantial,
Yeah.
but so then then let's say the documentation and stuff. Let's say that's another 20% of the problem. Documentation, requirements, document specifications, all that stuff. So now basically you need to define the game portion, which is effectively a 3D beta test
Yeah.
type thing, which kind of encompasses, let's say, 60%.
How difficult do you think it will be to translate the accelerometer data into like a specific motion that you need?
I don't suspect it will be that difficult.
Okay.
I think that the precision of the motions might be surprisingly sluggish. I do know that the accelerometer data, and actually on the iPhone, the M chip and the newer iPhones they read data points much more often. So if you send that data, it might be less sluggish. But in general, I would suspect that the data points are going to be relatively sluggish. So you're going to have to fit them, very generally to kind of a, if you're going to make a big L, you would have to kind of generally make it match an L as opposed to it being real precise. That would be my suspicion.
Yeah.
But that's also part of what you're...
disadvantage of using your phone instead of an actual motion.
Right, but you might find that there is, the thing that's going through my mind right now is kind of this idea of fuzzy logic, where as long as you match up what you can do with the phone with reasonable actions, you might actually be able to do fairly complex things with the phone, as long as you can filter between the multiple things. So fuzzy logic effectively says that as long as something is within a certain threshold, it's considered good or on. If it's not within that threshold, it's considered off. Instead of thinking about the world as binary, it's either on or off. Well, if something is almost on, well, what does almost mean? Well, if it's 30% on, we're going to call that on. So it's barely on, it's on. Okay, if it's not barely on, so it's less than 30%, it's off. So it's possible that you could use, fuzzy logic based on it, where as long as the sensor says that these two things are within, they're supposed to be right next to each other, and they're within 600 pixels of each other, we call that good. Kind of experimenting with stuff like that. So that's going to obviously be some of the time as well. So if nothing else, what you should do if you're going to have to kind of be a moving target on what actual 3D features you can show, the very least you should capture a lot of data and keep a lot of documentation about various experiments you do with the motion controller, and that way in the end it's almost like a research project where you can present your findings in terms of given information for considering future application of this.
Okay.
What can you expect it to be able to accomplish versus what is really unreasonable for using the phone for that.
Okay.
Make some sense? So I think it's a cool idea. I think it's worthwhile doing. But you might need to be a little flexible in whether it turns into more of a researchy thing with a small demo, or if it ends up being actually kind of better than you expected with a little bit more involved demo.
Okay.
What else? Go ahead.
But it was kind of the same thing as last time, but adding a full compiler into it as well, so you can upload source code and then have it auto-compile and auto-show you the output.
Okay, so adding a compiler to Slack.
Yeah, you can upload.
For a specific language?
Well, Java would probably be.
Okay. Kind of a cool thing you might, have you ever worked with Groovy?
I've not.
Okay, so Groovy, and either have I, but I've read about it quite a bit. Groovy is, it's a Java API, or probably a Java SDK is the better. So it's Java syntax that I think it mostly supports the full suite of Java syntax, but you can actually dumb it down some, similar to Swift, where you can leave certain parentheses off and things like that. But it's for Java programmers, but for scripting situations. So script with Java. So it might be kind of cool to.
So actually have like commands that you can save and say someone writes a script or something and says save this script as what, and the next time someone.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, so it might be worth looking into something like that. So rather than interpreting true Java code, which would be okay as well, I'm just kind of thinking when you consider your interface with Slack,
Right.
do you write it on a text editor first, then paste it in,
Yeah,
or
the idea would be.
do you upload a file with the correct kind of extension to do it? You see what I'm saying?
Well, when you upload with Slack and you choose a source code, you can choose what language it is.
Yeah.
So you can parse that out and say, oh, this is Java because this says it's Java.
Well, right, but when you put source code in, are you pasting it into the kind of the text field
Yeah, if you
down here? You're pasting it here.
There should be if you click the plus button.
Okay.
Hang on.
So I can upload a file. I can create a snippet. Or I can create a
You
post.
can create a snippet, and then on the top right, you should be able to drop down.
Okay.
The language,
Oh,
and then auto.
that seems pretty handy. Oh, is Groovy's on there?
Yeah.
I mean, that would certainly be cool to be able to write snippets of code in here that actually get interpreted.
Right.
I wouldn't do it for more than one language.
Right.
I mean, so Groovy might be kind of a cool one because since we do a lot of Java in the department, people are going to be familiar with it. It might be a good way of kind of writing pseudocode for things.
Sure.
I guess I'm trying to come up with a reasonable, applied reason for doing that. It sounds cool from like a geek perspective,
Right.
but is there a legitimate reason to do it? That doesn't mean don't do it as like a
Yeah,
proof
you
of
can have
concept.
quizzes that way. Say, okay, go write a quick little quiz on Java, this to make sure it compiles.
I guess that's true.
And if it doesn't compile,
They could send it to me as a private message.
Right.
I kind of like that idea.
Saves a sheet of paper.
Okay, I actually have a proposal for another idea if anybody's interested. Somebody's still looking for an idea. This would be more on the computer science side of things, I think. So in 200, I've been we use GameSalad still some, but I actually switched over and I've been using a Google language called Blockly. And Blockly effectively lets you kind of drag and drop out puzzle pieces that all work together to create programming logic. And at the end of the day, what ends up happening is it's represented as an XML document. So when the students submit it for me to test, I actually have them click on the tab to show the XML, and they copy that, they submit that. That's also the way that a student backs up. I say every few minutes, go in there and copy all your XML in case, your browser crashes or you accidentally hit the back button because it's gone. It's all gone. Okay. So what I think would be kind of cool is to build a web-based wrapper around Blockly that effectively allowed a student to log in to it. Probably uses parse as the back end for it, and then it allowed them to create new Blockly projects. And Blockly has a whole API associated with it. It's not real difficult to work with. This is more of something that just hasn't been done. but it will allow them to create projects, and it would save their progress. So save that XML document. Blockly already knows how to, if you paste in a wall of XML, it knows how to turn that back into blocks. So these aren't things, that's not the problem you're saving. You're effectively creating a way of saving XML documents and reloading those into the Blockly API. So it's actually, I think, a very useful thing because it would help out our 200 classes so people don't lose stuff. So I would call it a maybe a medium difficulty CS project that has a pretty big need. So I would certainly be pro that if anybody is interested in a project like that. Does that sound of interest to anybody? No?
It sounds, I don't want to sound cocky, but it sounds easy.
Well, how do you know if it sounds easy if you don't really know what the API looks like?
I mean, looking at like other APIs and looking at how they're compiled, whether or not you're able to actually access it offline would be the big question.
I don't even care about the offline. Online only is completely acceptable.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, are you able to take their API and actually generate their, like, Blockly offline so you can test all of your stuff? You can test the wrappers and stuff like that.
Well, the answer is yes, because that Blockly runs in your browser. It's 100% in your browser. It's a JavaScript library. So it already knows how to turn XML into Blockly. That's not something you'll have to solve for. Effectively, what you're solving for is an authentication system that stores XML documents for students and is able to load them into a Blockly project and also save from a Blockly project. So you're integrating two tools, an authentication system with Blockly being able to load and reload projects, save projects, things like that. So I don't actually think it's going to be that trivial. But I don't think it's like the most difficult project in the world. That's why I said I think it's kind of a medium difficulty computer science type project. But there's I would say, a pretty big need for it for our CSC491 class. So I think that would be a very big benefit to the department if somebody was interested in that. So if you are interested, let me know. I can tell you a little bit more about it or something like that, but just do a search for Blockly, Blockly. It's a Google project. You can find it out there, and you can just, I guess, whatever. That's the thing. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, so our idea paper is due before class starts on Tuesday, and I will be happy to review them in class on Tuesday if you want me to, if you want to hang out and have me look at it. I will spend the first 15 or 20 minutes of class on Tuesday talking about the requirements document and what kind of needs to go into that. That's going to be due the following Tuesday. So if you are confident on your project now and you want to start on the requirements document, remember the requirements document is effectively a unambiguous list of everything that project needs to be able to do. Okay? So it should be almost function as a checklist. You can follow various templates you can find online, whichever is most appropriate for your project. But I'll put something up over the weekend for you. All right, I will see everybody on Tuesday.